Most people move through life doing exactly what they were taught to do. They work hard, stay disciplined, set goals, stay organized, and try their best to keep everything under control. And yet, despite all of that effort, they still feel an emptiness they can't explain. They achieve a little, they progress a little, they move forward a little, but something inside remains unsettled. The reason is simple. They have left God out of their success formula, and without that foundation, nothing truly satisfies. You can build a house with the finest materials and the most precise tools, but if the ground beneath it is weak, the entire structure will always feel unstable. Life works the same way. Putting God first is not just a comforting spiritual idea. It is the single most powerful success principle you will ever learn. When you put God at the center of your thinking, your priorities change. Your decisions become clearer. Your direction becomes stronger. Your confidence rises not because of willpower, but because of alignment. A person aligned with God moves with a different kind of certainty, a deeper calm, and a more powerful sense of purpose. And the truth is, you already know this on some level. You've felt the difference in those moments when your heart was right, when you felt guided, when you felt connected. The tragedy is that most people only live in that state by accident, not by intention. After more than 4 decades studying achievement, human behavior, and the psychology of peak performance, I discovered something that completely changed the way I understood success. Discipline is essential, strategy is crucial, and hard work is non-negotiable, but none of these can replace spiritual alignment. Without a spiritual foundation, your achievements become fragile. You can become successful in the eyes of the world while feeling lost in the eyes of your own soul. You can be extraordinarily productive and still be completely off track. This is one of the great paradoxes of modern success. People are overwhelmed with tools, resources, and information, yet they feel more directionless than ever. I have met countless men and women who reached impressive levels of material success, yet confessed privately that something was missing. They weren't fulfilled, they weren't grounded, and they weren't at peace. They had the results, but lacked the meaning. And it always came down to the same missing key. God was not part of their daily decisions, their priorities, their thinking, or their discipline. Without God, life becomes a constant effort to fill a space that was never meant to be filled by accomplishments alone. You can achieve everything you ever dreamed of and still wake up wondering why it doesn't feel like enough. But when you put God first, even the small steps feel significant because you know you are moving in the right direction. In this video, I will show you how putting God first will give you more clarity, more peace, and more real power than any technique or productivity hack. Techniques work, but they work better when your heart is aligned with the right purpose. Tools help, but they help more when your mind is anchored in something greater than yourself. Putting God first doesn't weaken your ambition. It strengthens your ambition with meaning. It doesn't slow you down. It directs your energy. When you learn to align your goals with God's guidance, you stop pushing against the world and start moving with a sense of flow that makes everything easier. Success becomes simpler, not because the world changes, but because you change. You may be thinking that you've already tried everything. You've read the books, set the goals, made the lists, pushed yourself, disciplined your habits, worked late nights, early mornings, weekends, and holidays. You've optimized your life to the point where there is no more space to improve, and yet something still feels off. This is the exact moment when most people either quit or collapse under the pressure. But this is also the moment when a shift in perspective can transform everything. The missing key is not more effort. The missing key is spiritual alignment. When God becomes the center of your life, exhaustion turns into direction, anxiety turns into clarity, and pressure turns into purpose. I want you to stay with me until the end because I will share one simple daily habit that can realign your life with God's purpose in a matter of days. Not years, not months, days. A habit so simple that anyone can do it, and yet so powerful that it has transformed the lives of thousands of people around the world. And if you stay to the final moments, I'll also share one bonus principle I only reveal to students who have followed my work closely, a principle that can dramatically increase your ability to make decisions aligned with divine direction. This bonus insight alone can prevent years of frustration and wasted effort because it will help you recognize instantly when you are moving according to God's plan and when you are moving according to fear or ego. If you're serious about growing in every area of your life, subscribe right now and continue with me through these next few minutes. Make a decision here and now that for once you will not skip the most important principle of all. Most people rush through life chasing the next technique, the next strategy, the next trick that promises faster results. But the greatest breakthrough you can experience is not about speed. It is about alignment. When your inner world is right, your outer world transforms. When your relationship with God becomes your foundation, everything you build stands stronger. Success becomes more joyful, more meaningful, and far more sustainable. And the truth is, the moment you put God first, everything else in your life finds its proper order. Stay with me. At the end, that one daily habit might be the key you've been missing your entire life. And when you learn it, you may look back and realize that this moment, the moment you chose to put God first, was the moment everything finally began to make sense. When I talk about success, people often imagine the high achiever, the person who wakes up early, organizes every part of their day, fills their calendar, moves from one task to another with precision and speed. Someone who is disciplined, reliable, always planning the next move, always pushing toward a new milestone. They are admired because they get things done. They look impressive from the outside, but what most people never see is what happens on the inside when success is built only on effort, strategy, and human strength, but never on a spiritual foundation. Outward progress with inward emptiness, action without alignment, speed without direction. You may have met people like this. You might even recognize some of these patterns in yourself. They hit one goal, then another, then another. They stack achievements on top of each other, like trophies on a shelf. They have the discipline, the ambition, the drive, but they don't feel fulfilled. They don't feel a deep sense of peace. They move faster each year, but they don't truly know where they are going. They wake up with a plan, but not with purpose. They have accomplishments, but they have no foundation. They have built the structure of life, but not the base that holds it all together. The root cause is simple. They built their lives on strategy, but not on a spiritual base. They put effort at the center. They put ambition at the center. They put themselves at the center, And when a person stands at the center of their own universe, everything depends on personal strength, personal logic, personal control. That sounds empowering at first, but when you carry everything on your own shoulders for too long, stress rises, anxiety rises, confusion rises, identity becomes fragile because it relies entirely on performance. There is a completely different way to live and work. When a person places God at the center instead of themselves, something fundamental shifts. Purpose becomes clearer, decisions become calmer, effort becomes guided, direction becomes stable. You still work hard, but you no longer work blindly. You still plan, but you plan with wisdom that does not come only from logic. You still push forward, but your steps are aligned with something greater than your own thinking. This is the difference between man-centered success and God-centered success. One leads to constant pressure and instability. The other leads to peace, clarity, and long-term strength. Maybe you recognize the feeling. You are productive but tired. You are achieving but not fulfilled. You are busy but empty in quiet moments. You are winning on paper, but something inside feels restless. If that is happening, it is usually a sign that God is not first. He is present, but He is an accessory. He is something you remember when you have time, and any life built that way has no foundation, no spiritual base, and without that base, even your greatest achievements feel strangely light. Let me tell you about a man I once coached. He had the car, the home, the income, the admiration of his peers. He worked harder than anyone around him. He woke up early, exercised, planned his day, grew his business, and hit every measurable target. But he came to me one afternoon and said, "I don't understand what's happening. I have everything I once wanted, but I don't feel anything." And the more he talked, the clearer it became. He had constructed a career, but not a sense of meaning. He had done everything except build a foundation. His life was strong on the surface, but hollow underneath. He had no spiritual base, and without that base, the achievements he once dreamed of felt empty. He realized he had built upward without building inward. Another man told me a story I never forgot. He said he used to measure every year by income. If the number went up, he called it success. If the number went down, he felt like a failure. He lived by charts, graphs, and deadlines. But he also admitted he felt a strange sense of panic every Sunday evening, almost like a quiet voice telling him he was moving fast in the wrong direction. When he reconnected with his faith and began placing God first, everything changed. Not instantly, but steadily. He said the anxiety faded, the confusion faded, the constant push to prove himself faded. What grew was clarity, peace, purpose. He began succeeding with joy instead of pressure. He stopped carrying everything alone. He finally had a foundation. Have you ever reached a goal and still felt restless? Have you ever achieved something you thought would change everything, only to discover the satisfaction disappeared after a few hours or a few days? If you have, you are not alone. Many people experience this. They grind for years, believing the next victory will finally make them feel complete. But if there is no foundation, no spiritual base, the achievement cannot fill the emptiness. Success without God at the center becomes a cycle of chasing, reaching, and feeling disappointed again and again. This is why many high achievers feel a quiet exhaustion. They know how to build, but they don't know how to anchor. They know how to control, but they don't know how to surrender. They know how to plan, but they don't know how to listen. They rely entirely on their own strength, and they wonder why the weight feels heavier each year. Without a foundation, everything is fragile. One failure can shake them. One setback can discourage them. One unexpected problem can collapse their confidence because their identity is tied to performance, not to purpose. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine a tall building with beautiful glass windows, expensive design, perfect lighting. From the outside, it looks strong, but underneath the surface, there is almost nothing supporting it. One strong wind could bring it down. That is the life many people build. They decorate the outside, but they never reinforce the inside. They add more floors, more achievements, more goals, but they never improve the foundation. And eventually they feel the instability. You may feel it too. A quiet sense that something is missing, something essential, something that should have been there from the beginning. You were not designed to carry your entire life alone. You were not designed to navigate every decision through logic only. You were not designed to chase achievement without anchoring your soul. When you put God at the center, everything aligns. Work becomes purposeful. Effort becomes meaningful. Achievements feel complete, not empty. You move forward with direction instead of confusion. You make choices with clarity instead of pressure. You wake up with energy instead of anxiety. You finally have a foundation, a real foundation, a spiritual base that holds everything together. And here is the truth many people learn too late. It does not matter how fast you climb if the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. It does not matter how much you build if the ground underneath is weak. It does not matter how impressive your success appears if your heart feels empty. You have the ability to change this. You can rebuild your foundation at any time. You can realign your life with God at any moment. You can shift from pressure to peace, from confusion to direction, from emptiness to fulfillment. Success without foundation leads to stress, fear, and instability. Success with God at the center leads to strength, clarity, and long-term meaning. And deep down, you already know which one you want. You deserve a life built on something solid. You deserve a foundation that will not break. You deserve success that feels complete. And that begins the moment you decide to stop carrying everything alone and start building with God at the center. When we talk about the idea of putting God first, we must begin by understanding it with absolute clarity. Putting God first means that every major element of your life is anchored in something greater than impulse or ego. It means your values, your priorities, and the decisions you make each day are aligned with a higher intelligence that sees further than you ever could. People often imagine that surrendering their ego is a sign of weakness. In reality, it is one of the greatest acts of personal strength. It is intelligent humility. It is the recognition that your mind, no matter how disciplined or brilliant, is limited compared to the wisdom of the one who designed your path long before you were born. When you acknowledge that limitation, you do not shrink. You expand. You open yourself to direction that removes confusion, reduces wasted effort, and multiplies your effectiveness. Putting God first is not a Sunday activity. It is a daily priority decision. Every morning, successful people set their intentions. They decide what matters most, and you must do the same. Before the world asks anything of you, you decide whom you serve. You choose the order in which your inner world will operate. When God is at the top of your hierarchy of values, everything else finds its appropriate place. Work becomes meaningful rather than frantic. Money becomes a tool instead of a master. Relationships take on depth and purpose. Time becomes structured, disciplined, and directed toward what truly counts. When God is first, nothing else demands the throne, and you are free from the chaos that comes from competing priorities. Think about the way success is usually defined. Most people chase measurement. They ask how much they can get, how fast they can achieve it, and how much recognition they can accumulate. But when you put God first, the very definition of success changes. It is no longer about accumulation. It becomes a question of contribution. How much value can you create? How many people can you help? How can you honor God through the quality of your work? Suddenly, your actions become aligned with purpose, and purpose is a far more powerful motivator than ego. Goals driven by ego fatigue you. Goals driven by purpose energize you. Putting God first transforms the way you think about your public image. Instead of asking how to impress people, you begin to ask how to live in integrity when nobody is watching. That single shift elevates your entire character. Real integrity is demonstrated in the small, silent decisions when there is no praise attached to doing the right thing. When you live from that place, you walk differently, you speak differently, you treat people differently. You begin to build a reputation not because you chase it, but because you embody it. And the most powerful reputation any human being can earn is the reputation of being consistent, reliable, and anchored in something larger than themselves. One of the greatest benefits of putting God first is the inner peace it produces. When your life has an order, you experience clarity. You stop running in circles. You stop asking the same fearful questions again and again. You develop a sense of direction that is strong enough to withstand uncertainty. When challenges arise, you can rest internally, even if the environment around you is unpredictable. That inner rest is not passive, it is strength. It is the quiet confidence that you are guided, supported, and aligned with the right path. Most people live with an underlying tension because their lives are built on sand. They depend entirely on their own understanding, their own plans, their own attempts to control every outcome. But when the storm comes, sand collapses. When your life is built on the rock of God's principles, the same storm arrives, yet you remain standing. The difference is not the weather, the difference is the foundation. Putting God first gives you what I often call inner order. Inner order is the foundation of high performance. When your mind is scattered, your actions are scattered. When your values are unclear, your days become inconsistent. But when you establish a clear hierarchy of values, your life begins to operate smoothly. Most people are overwhelmed not because they have too much to do, but because they are not clear about what matters most. When God is first, the question of priority becomes simple. You know what deserves your attention and what does not. You know which opportunities align with your purpose and which are merely distractions dressed up as obligations. This clarity alone can save you years of wasted effort. Putting God first also forces you to ask better questions. Instead of asking what you want, you begin asking what is required of you. Instead of asking how you can be seen, you ask how you can serve. The most successful people in every field share a common trait. They develop the habit of thinking long term. They make decisions today that honor the future they want to create. When your decisions are rooted in God's principles, you automatically shift into long-term thinking. You stop seeking shortcuts. You begin building habits, relationships, and character traits that compound over time. This shift does not just make you more successful, it makes you more grounded. Every other success habit you will ever learn depends on this principle. You cannot set meaningful goals until you know what you stand for. You cannot manage your time effectively until you understand what deserves priority. You cannot grow your influence until your character is stable. Putting God first is the foundation on which all other disciplines rest. It is the organizing principle of a meaningful life. Without it, you may achieve temporary results, but you will lack direction and fulfillment. With it, you establish a structure that supports everything else you choose to build. When you choose to put God first, you make a decision that changes not just your behavior, but your identity. You become a person guided by wisdom instead of impulse. You become intentional instead of reactive. You become disciplined instead of scattered. And every one of those qualities is essential for long-term achievement. Success is not an accident. It is the result of clear values, consistent actions, and the strength to pursue what matters most, even when it is inconvenient. Putting God first gives you that strength. It aligns your heart, your mind, and your daily actions with a purpose that outlasts every temporary challenge. The truth is that your life is always moving in the direction of your dominant focus. If your focus is on self-protection, you will live small. If your focus is on ego, you will live restless. If your focus is on God, you will live with clarity, courage, and direction. And as you apply this principle daily, you will notice something extraordinary. Progress becomes smoother, decisions become clearer, and your path becomes more defined. You stop fighting against life and begin working with it. You begin experiencing a sense of flow that only comes when your priorities are in the right order. Putting God first is the most powerful success strategy ever created. It redefines your motivation, sharpens your discipline, and strengthens your resilience. It turns uncertainty into opportunity, temptation into clarity, and chaos into order. And as you continue to practice it, your results will reflect the stability of your foundation. A life built on God's principles does not crumble under pressure. It becomes stronger. It becomes more focused. It becomes more meaningful. And in that strength, you discover the greatest reward of all, the deep, unshakable peace of knowing you are moving in the right direction, guided by the right source, becoming the person you were designed to be. When you place God first in your daily decisions and in your work, something remarkable begins to happen inside you. It is not just a change of belief, it is a change of orientation. Most people say they believe in God, yet they move through life relying only on their own strength, their own plans, their own hurried impulses. They wake up and fall into the day as if life is an accident. You are not like that, and you cannot afford to live like that if you truly want to rise to the next level of achievement, contribution, and spiritual maturity. It is not enough to believe in God. You must bring Him into your calendar, your decisions, and your work. The moment you do this, everything else begins to shift in your favor. A man who puts God first still works hard. In fact, he often works harder than before. But the intention behind his work transforms completely. Before, he used to work for validation, recognition, or the approval of people who were just as lost and confused as he was. Now he works with the intention to serve, to contribute, to honor the gifts he has been given, and to fulfill the purpose that God has placed on his life. This shift in intention is the most powerful internal transformation a man can experience. You stop being a slave to the opinions of others. You stop chasing empty rewards. You begin to work because you are called, not because you are pressured. You understand that your work is part of your worship. When God is first, your decision-making changes as well. You stop making decisions solely based on profit or pressure. You begin to ask a different question, a higher question. Instead of asking, what benefits me the most right now? You ask, what is right? What is honorable? What decision aligns with the values that God has placed in my heart? This single shift in how you evaluate your choices will save you from years of pain and regret. Many people have achieved success in business only to lose their integrity, their peace, their relationships, and their inner joy. But a man who puts God first asks the critical questions. Does this honor God? Does this build or destroy? Does this lift me closer to the person I want to become? When you evaluate your decisions through that lens, you suddenly gain clarity and confidence. You begin to trust not only your mind, but your spirit. And your spirit will always guide you toward what is good, what is strong, and what is lasting. One day, you will face a crossroads where one option is profitable but dishonest, and the other is honest but less profitable in the short term. This is a defining moment that tests who you really are. A man without God will collapse into whatever brings the most money or applause. A man with God at the center of his life will choose the path of integrity because he knows that no amount of money will compensate for a soul that is out of alignment. When you choose what is right, God multiplies your results in ways you could never measure or predict. Sometimes he gives you material reward. Sometimes he gives you peace, protection, and long-term opportunities that far exceed the temporary gain of a corrupt decision. The reward always comes, and it always arrives in a form that honors your obedience. Putting God first also transforms your discipline and your productivity. When you allow God to guide your day, you stop filling your schedule with noise. The false urgencies that once consumed your time begin to fade away. You start focusing on what truly matters. You remove the trivial activities that drain your mental energy and distract your purpose. Your day becomes more simple and more powerful. You begin to move with intention instead of reacting to every little demand that others place upon you. This simplicity is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Complexity drains your spirit. Simplicity strengthens it. The most successful people I have ever met are those who have learned to align their tasks with their values. And when your highest value is God, everything else falls into place. All the classic tools that I have taught for decades, planning, priorities, goals, time management, these tools rest upon one central question. Who is first in your life? If the answer is you, your ego will eventually sabotage your progress. If the answer is money, you will eventually compromise your integrity. If the answer is comfort, you will eventually stop growing. But if the answer is God, your priorities become clear. Your goals become rooted in purpose instead of vanity. And your time becomes sacred, not wasted. The moment you wake up each morning, you are already making decisions. Most people reach for their phones, check messages, scroll through the world's noise, and begin the day with distraction instead of direction. I want you to do something different. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone or your email, pause and put God first consciously. Sit for a brief moment and ask for direction for the day. You may be surprised by how much clarity arrives in those moments of stillness. You may notice a sense of peace or a clear impression of what needs to be done, or even a gentle reminder of something you have been avoiding. God does not shout, He leads. And when you slow down enough to listen, you receive guidance that elevates your entire day. Imagine starting your morning like this. You wake up, breathe deeply, and take one quiet moment to acknowledge God's presence. You express gratitude for the opportunities ahead. You ask for wisdom, discipline, and strength to face the tasks of the day. Only after that do you plan your priorities, review your goals, or begin your work. Notice how different this feels from the frantic, hurried mornings that most people experience. You are grounded, you are centered, your mind is calm, and your spirit is clear. You carry that clarity into your work, and suddenly the tasks that once seemed heavy become manageable. Decisions that once felt confusing become simple. Distractions that once pulled you away lose their power. And here is something else that happens when God is first. You begin to see your challenges differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" You stop seeing obstacles as punishments and start seeing them as training. You stop fearing difficulties because you know that every difficulty contains a lesson, and every lesson prepares you for a higher level of life. God does not waste your pain, and He does not waste your effort. Every challenge is part of a bigger design that you cannot see yet. And when you trust that design, you develop patience, strength, and resilience that others cannot understand. Throughout your day, you can continue to ask one practical question. Does this decision fit my values before God? Ask it when you receive a business offer. Ask it when you feel stressed or pressured. Ask it when you are tempted to rush or compromise. This question is like a compass that keeps you aligned with your purpose. And when you stay aligned, you become unstoppable. Near the end of this message, I want you to remember this. If you truly want a breakthrough in your personal life, your relationships, your work, your finances, and your inner peace, it begins with putting God first. At the end of our work together, I will share with you a simple, powerful daily habit that will keep you centered, grounded, and spiritually aligned every morning. But for now, take the micro challenge. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, put God first, ask for direction, and begin your day with clarity, purpose, and strength. This one shift can change everything. When you look deeply at the greatest obstacles in your personal and spiritual development, you eventually discover that the real barrier is not the world, not other people, not your circumstances, but your own ego. Your ego wants to be in control at all times. It insists on being right. It demands recognition, approval, and comfort. It wants to move fast, without guidance, without correction, without accountability. But God wants something far greater for you than comfort. He wants growth. He wants integrity. He wants the kind of impact that only becomes possible when you stop living for yourself and start living under His direction. And this requires a level of humility that your ego naturally resists. Every breakthrough in your life begins at the moment you accept that you do not and cannot know everything. The moment you pause, breathe, and say, "I need guidance," You begin aligning yourself with a source of wisdom far greater than your own. The ego hates this because it thrives on the illusion of total self-sufficiency. It whispers, "You can handle it alone. You don't need help. You don't need correction." But the truth is that every real leader, every wise thinker, and every spiritually grounded person learns to welcome correction. They learn to slow down when necessary, even when the ego wants to sprint forward. They learn to change direction when God asks them to, even if the ego insists on finishing what it started. When you submit the ego to God, your relationships begin to transform almost immediately. You stop seeing people as tools for your ambitions. You no longer evaluate them by what they can do for you, but by who they are. You become more patient because you are not constantly defending your image. You become more fair because you are no longer operating out of insecurity. You forgive faster because your worth is not tied to winning arguments, proving points, or maintaining superiority. You start responding instead of reacting because you recognize that every situation is an opportunity to grow in character rather than an opportunity to display dominance. Your identity shifts from external validation to internal alignment with God's will. And when that happens, the pressure to impress others begins to dissolve. You no longer need to win every debate, control every outcome, or be the center of attention in every room. Instead, you begin to ask a different set of questions. What is the right thing to do? What does God want me to learn here? How can I contribute rather than compete? These questions change the tone of your interactions. People feel it. They sense the integrity. They respond to it. Leadership, at its highest level, is the art of serving others while being guided by principles that are bigger than your personal ambitions. The best leaders are always those who are led by something higher than their ego. They do not lead to dominate. They lead to uplift. They do not command loyalty through fear. They inspire it through consistency and character. They do not try to be the smartest person in the room. They try to bring out the best in the people around them. The ego-driven leader thinks in terms of competition. He divides people. He demands obedience. He protects his image at all costs. He avoids correction because correction threatens his identity. He blames others when things go wrong. He creates tension, insecurity, and fear around him. And eventually, ego-driven leadership destroys everything it touches. It ruins business deals because it refuses to negotiate with humility. It destroys marriages because it refuses to apologize. It sabotages teams because it refuses to listen. Everywhere ego goes unchecked, relationships fracture, opportunities disappear, and trust evaporates. The God-centered leader is completely different. He listens more than he speaks. He seeks wisdom before taking action. He apologizes quickly because his identity is not threatened by admitting mistakes. He builds teams on trust because trust matters more than ego. He allows others to shine because he understands that leadership is not about personal glory, but about collective progress. He treats people with dignity, not because he must, but because he knows that every person carries value bestowed by God. This kind of leader creates environments where people feel safe, motivated, and appreciated. And when people feel safe, they perform better, communicate better, and remain loyal. When you put God first, you protect yourself from your own impulses. You create a filter that stops you from saying things in anger, making decisions in pride, cutting corners, acting out of fear or jealousy. You allow divine wisdom to interrupt you when you are about to sabotage your own future. You give God permission to redirect your steps even when it feels uncomfortable. And in doing so, you avoid countless mistakes that your ego would otherwise lead you into. Every day, you have a choice. You can operate from ego and create resistance, conflict, and short term gratification. Or you can operate from humility and create clarity, harmony, and long term growth. You can push people away with your need to be right, or you can draw them closer with your willingness to listen. You can let your impulses dictate your behavior, or you can let your values guide your decisions. The more you study high achievers, the more you realize that the ones who build lasting success are not the loudest or the most self assured. They are the ones who discipline their inner world. They are the ones who submit their emotions, desires, and ambitions to a higher standard. They are the ones who look in the mirror and ask, where am I allowing ego to run my life? Where am I resisting guidance? Where am I pretending to know more than I actually do? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are also liberating. They free you from self-deception. They draw you closer to wisdom. They make you stronger, not weaker. Imagine how your life would look if you approached every relationship with humility instead of defensiveness, every challenge with faith instead of fear, every decision with wisdom instead of impulse. Imagine how much trust you would build, how much conflict you would avoid, how much progress you would make. This is what happens when you put God before your ego. People begin to feel safe around you. They feel understood. They feel respected. And trust is the currency of leadership. Without it, nothing works. With it, everything becomes possible. So I ask you directly, as you reflect on your life, your goals, your relationships, and your behavior, where is your ego running your life right now? Where are you holding on instead of surrendering? Where are you pushing ahead when God is asking you to slow down? Where are you trying to be right instead of doing what is right? And most importantly, where is God inviting you to grow into a stronger, wiser, and more impactful version of yourself? The moment you answer these questions honestly, everything begins to change. Because that is the moment your ego loses its power and God's wisdom begins to guide your path. When you look carefully at the moments that shape your life, you will notice something extraordinary. The turning points very rarely happen when everything is under control. They appear in the middle of uncertainty, in seasons where the path is unclear, and in situations where your plans collide with reality. I want you to understand this because it will save you years of frustration. Life will not always follow your script. You will prepare for opportunities that never arrive. You will invest yourself in projects that collapse without warning. People you trust will walk away, and there will be mornings when you wonder why something that looks so promising suddenly fell apart. That is part of the human experience. But how you respond to these moments determines the quality of your life and the strength of your character. Most people make the same mistake. They rely entirely on their own plans, their own timing, their own projections. They say, if I can control every variable, everything will turn out the way I imagine. But the truth is that the man who walks alone collapses the moment control slips from his hands. One unexpected crisis can shake his confidence. One delay can drain his motivation. When something takes longer than expected, he interprets it as failure instead of preparation. And because his sense of security depends entirely on the outcome, he lives in a constant cycle of anxiety, hurry, and disappointment. But when you learn to put God first, something remarkable happens. You develop a deeper kind of strength, one that does not vanish when the results don't come immediately. You begin to understand that your security does not come from the speed of your progress or the visibility of your success. It comes from the one who guides you forward. This shift is powerful because it frees you from the belief that you must control everything. You plan with greater clarity, you act with greater intention, and you move with greater confidence, knowing that you are not walking alone. You are participating in a process that is bigger than your current circumstances. This is why the true definition of success becomes different. In God's order, success is not measured only by what you accomplish or by the recognition you receive. Success is measured by obedience, faithfulness, and inner growth. You succeed each time you move forward with the right intention, even if the result takes longer to appear. You succeed when you stay calm in uncertainty because you trust the path God is shaping for you. You succeed when you grow in character, discipline, and resilience, even if other people do not immediately see your progress. This way of measuring your life changes everything because it removes the fear of falling short. Instead, it focuses your attention on becoming the person God is preparing you to be. Trusting God does not mean standing still. It does not mean waiting passively for everything to align. In fact, it requires the opposite. You still plan, you still take action, and you still move decisively. But you no longer act from panic or desperation. You no longer rush into decisions just to avoid discomfort. You move with a focused mind and a steady heart. You do your part with excellence, and you let God handle the outcome. This is the formula that creates extraordinary results. Faith plus action. Faith gives you peace and strength. Action gives you momentum and growth. Together, they form a partnership that dissolves fear and builds confidence. There will be moments in your life when you think something is being delayed, when you believe that a door has closed permanently, or that you missed an opportunity you were counting on. In those moments, remind yourself that not every delay is a denial. Many times, what you call delay is actually preparation. What you call closed door is protection. I remember speaking with leaders, entrepreneurs, and high achievers who told me that the biggest breakthroughs of their lives came after seasons of frustration. They wanted something to happen quickly, but the timing was not right. And when the right moment arrived, they looked back and realized that if things had happened earlier, they would not have been ready to handle the blessing or the responsibility that came with it. Think of your own life for a moment. How many times did something not happen the way you expected, only for you to later discover that the detour led to something better? How many situations that felt like failure were actually training? The truth is that apparent failure often hides hidden preparation. When you look at it through God's perspective, you begin to see that every challenge, every pause, and every shift in direction is designed to shape you into a stronger, wiser, and more capable person. You are not losing time. You are being formed for the next level of responsibility and influence. One of the areas where this new understanding becomes most visible is in the way you manage your time. When God is first, you stop postponing the things that matter. You stop running after everything that shines without asking whether it actually aligns with your purpose. You become intentional about how you use the hours of your day. You remove distractions. You cut out the noise. You simplify your commitments. You start focusing on what brings long-term growth instead of what brings momentary excitement. And as you do this, you begin to feel something powerful, urgency without anxiety. You move forward with determination, but without fear. You work hard, but you stay centered. You pursue excellence, but you remain grounded. This new relationship with time also helps you recognize that some processes require seasons to mature. You cannot force growth that needs time. You cannot accelerate lessons that must be learned slowly. When you understand this, your frustration decreases because you stop demanding instant results from long-term processes. You become patient without being passive. You become disciplined without becoming rigid. You work with the rhythm of life instead of against it. And you discover that consistency, when aligned with God's direction, produces results far greater than intensity without wisdom. I want you to reflect on something very important. Ask yourself, what are you calling failure that might actually be preparation? What situation in your life are you labeling as a loss when it may be God positioning you for something greater? What closed door might be redirecting you toward a place where your gifts will grow, your faith will deepen, and your character will strengthen? These questions matter because the meaning you give to your experiences will determine your resilience and your sense of direction. Every great transformation begins internally, and this inner transformation becomes visible in your habits. I want you to remember that a specific daily God-first habit is coming later, something simple and powerful that will anchor your day and shape your mindset. But even before we get to that, I want you to start thinking differently about uncertainty. Instead of fearing it, begin to see it as a space where God works. Instead of resisting delays, learn to trust the timing that is being arranged for you. Instead of judging yourself harshly when something does not move as fast as you want it to, acknowledge the inner growth that is happening beneath the surface. When you shift your focus from outcomes to obedience, from results to faithfulness, from speed to direction, you unlock a level of peace and productivity that most people never experience. You become stronger, wiser, and more grounded. You stop reacting to circumstances and start responding with clarity. You move forward with courage because your confidence no longer comes from your own ability to control the future, but from the assurance that God is guiding you through it. This is the essence of living with trust, purpose, and true success. And when you internalize it, your entire life begins to move in a different direction, steady, focused, intentional, and blessed. When you put God first, you stop defining yourself by your money, your achievements, or the reactions of the people around you. You begin to see that who you truly are has never depended on external applause. It depends on the foundation that supports you from the inside. And when that foundation is rooted in God, you no longer feel the need to chase validation or compete with shadows. You return to a place of clarity, stability, and strength. You remember who you are and why you are here. The moment your identity becomes clear, everything in your life begins to shift. Decisions that once felt complicated suddenly become simple, because they are no longer filtered through insecurity or fear. You stop asking, will people approve of this? And begin asking, is this aligned with the purpose God has given me? You protect your mind with more discipline because you understand that your thoughts shape your destiny. You protect your time with more conviction because you finally see your hours as a sacred resource. You stop selling your values in exchange for temporary approval because your direction is no longer for sale. When you know who you are in God, you stop negotiating your integrity for a moment of comfort or attention. You act with consistency because your purpose no longer changes with the weather. This clarity also affects the way you work, lead, and serve. When you establish your identity in God, you don't need to prove yourself in every conversation. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to appear stronger than you are. You become grounded. You learn to speak with calm authority. You learn to walk into every situation with an inner confidence that doesn't depend on circumstances. Instead of reacting, you start responding. Instead of rushing, you start prioritizing. Instead of chasing everything, you focus on the few things that truly matter. In fact, the more clearly you know who you are, the more quickly you eliminate everything that distracts you. And when you understand identity, you begin to understand legacy. Legacy is not built by chance. It is built by your daily decisions, by the way you treat people, by the discipline you apply when no one is watching, by the problems you decide to solve, and by the example you leave behind. In the end, what will remain is not your list of accomplishments, but the quality of your character. People may forget your titles, your job positions, and even your successes, but they will not forget how you made them feel. They will not forget the standards you live by. They will not forget the strength, humility, and wisdom they saw in you. Legacy is the invisible mark you leave on the lives of others, and that mark is shaped every day by the choices you make. This is why putting God first is the key to lasting success. When God is at the center, your goals take on a new meaning. You stop chasing outcomes that inflate your ego and start pursuing goals that elevate your purpose. You begin to think beyond today, beyond this year, beyond your immediate desires. You begin to consider the impact of your actions on the people around you. You begin to work not just for results, but for significance. And significance is what ultimately forms your legacy. Now let me give you the simple, repeatable daily habit I promised. It is a habit that will sharpen your focus, strengthen your confidence, and align your life. Every morning, before you begin any task, take a few quiet minutes to put God first intentionally. Thank Him for the new day. Ask for wisdom to make the right decisions. Align your goals with His will. And then ask one question. What is the most important thing you want me to do today? Write down the answer. Act on it. This one practice will change the direction of your day and, over time, the direction of your entire life. When you put God first each morning, you create a rhythm of purpose. You create a habit of clarity. You create momentum based on obedience rather than impulse. Putting God first is the key to lasting success. Repeat it to yourself. Let it sink in. Everything begins with that decision. When God is first, you begin to live with intention. You begin to simplify your priorities. You begin to see opportunities that were invisible before. You begin to walk with confidence because you are no longer walking alone. And now I want to challenge you. Today, make a conscious decision. Move yourself out of the center. Put God first in your goals, in your work, and in your relationships. This is not a decision that will make your life perfect, but it will make your life aligned. And an aligned life is far more powerful than a perfect one. Alignment brings peace, strength, resilience, and clarity. Alignment removes confusion and brings direction. Alignment helps you rise every time you fall. If this message helped you, subscribe now and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your support allows this message to grow and reach others who are searching for direction and strength. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, which area of your life do you need to bring under God's control first? I read every comment because your growth matters, your direction matters, your future matters. And remember this, because it will guide you for the rest of your life. When God is first, everything else finally finds its place.